Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here today, and we are talking about the modern asset manager. And the role is changing, right? They need to be the strategist. They need to be the data analyst. They need to understand technology, and they need to help ensure that operations on the ground are excellent. So there's plenty of access to data, but at the same time, the challenge is turn that data into insights and then turn those insights into action. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how we do that and how they're doing that right now, and maybe how we could do that in the future as well. So my name is Strole. I'm the moderator today and the owner of Capital Asset Management. We manage about 13 million square feet in retail, office, industrial. We're based in Phoenix, Arizona, but we also manage assets in Denver, in Las Vegas here, and in Los Angeles. And we work with asset managers all the time. We're a third-party company, so I'm excited to hear about what they have to say here. And most time asset managers are calling me because they're upset about something, but I love it when we get to talk about how we're working together and collaborating to add value to the property. So looking forward to this, and we're going to have everybody do their introductions, and we'll start here with you, Lisa, and we'll go down the road.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm Lisa Ye. I'm with an entity called Elevate Property Partners. It's KKR's multifamily platform. KKR owns about 16,000 apartments from coast to coast, about 60% Class A, 40% Class B workforce housing. I spent the last 25 years in multifamily.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Morgan. I work with Pacific Retail Capital Partners. We're based in Los Angeles, California. We're a private firm. We have about 20 million square feet of retail real estate. So we work primarily in regional enclosed shopping centers. We also have a book of business where we asset manage from an office perspective. The majority of our assets are third-party managed, blended with the number of assets we do own. And we operate in about 12 states. I head up the asset management.
My name's Rob Dunn. I work for Fairstead. We are a developer of affordable housing. We own about 28,000 apartments spread across the country in 28 states. We are based in New York City. I myself am based in Florida, but lead the asset management department.
My name is Mike Harrison, and I'm Chief Strategy Officer for a company called Entrust. We're a global company that does back office services and technology for mostly operators and investment managers. I'm a former COO and head of financial operations, asset management for Public REIT.
Excellent. Great having you all here. We'll start off with the first question. How are you preparing the next generation of asset managers for data-driven, cross-functional roles? And what skills matter more now than they did 5 years ago? Lisa, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think when I first started out, I don't think people understood what asset management was. It was sort of the catch-all for something that doesn't fit your traditional departments like legal, construction, development. And so when I first started out, it was more problem solving. You could be thrown on a site, say, hey, this one's distressed, go figure out how to do something, go figure out how to put it back in a good asset, or hey, go chase down some development land. But I think the modern asset manager now is almost a jack of all trades. You have to be a utility player. You have to know how to read your reports. You got to know what systems. You got to now know what type of locks you should invest in. You have to know how to calculate debt yield. You have to know your lender relationships. And then now you know how to manage your property management group. You have to know operations. You have to know how leases are structured. You have to know how to negotiate retail TI and construction and what type of retailer you should bring in and which one you should think about in terms of investing. So, the modern asset manager is essentially becoming a catch-all for everything. And so there's an expectation for at least the good ones out there to really know ins and outs and up to date about what's going on in technology, because you're now essentially being driven to find efficiencies. And so a good asset manager knows how to manage an asset through its life cycle and figuring out what type of capital investments that you would allocate. Most of the times, these assets, you shouldn't do anything if you buy it right. Not 90% of them, you just make sure to monitor that they're performing, that they're getting cash flow. The other 10% are usually distressed. Those are the type of assets you spend a lot of time trying to turn those assets around. So again, it's like it has definitely evolved into, I would say, more dynamic. On the upside, there's obviously huge demand for asset management just because you can't go to an asset management school when you think about it. So a lot of them have come through operations, which when I'm recruiting, I usually try to find somebody that is in operations that has a finance background. What I've discovered is there's a movement towards away from folks that traditionally they would hire asset managers to have an MBA with no operational background. Typically those, they have issues communicating or really know what's going on the site team. And so there's been this movement of really trying to understand on a day-to-day what operation does. And so I would say that's probably the last 4 or 5 years where when you're looking at recruiting or demand in the market space, they're essentially looking for this person that are like that unicorn that has a strong operational experience, but then that has a financial acumen.
Yeah, I can add on to that actually. So it's funny you say that because the way we operate our company at every one of our sites, we'll have a team that's effectively running the property led by a general manager, someone very senior. And we've always wanted to get them to wear a bit more of an asset management hat or just at least think like an asset manager to answer the questions that inherently are going to come into them from asset managers. And so we have kind of flipped the script and started to talk to them and call them sort of our de facto kind of mini asset managers. And it gives them sort of a sense of pride and a point and a way to operate. And you start to bring them into the loan perspectives and clients, you get them more exposure. And we've been able to actually develop a bit of a pipeline through that. And if not every one of them is going to develop into an asset management player on our team, they all still start to act like that in a way. And it's been very positive for us in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, 20 years ago, the asset manager really had to rely on property management, especially whether you're doing it in-house or third party for your reporting and, constant calls and all that stuff. And, once upon a time, still to a certain extent, but, data lagged real estate. That's what like you'd learn if you went to real estate grad school. Like you have to make decisions without perfect information. And that's what you're doing. Now it's a lot different. You can kind of leave the property management companies alone a little bit more, I think. I mean, not that we do, but because that's not what we're supposed to do. But either way, there's just all this data out there and it's more live and at your fingertips. And it's just, it's a different way to approach it. And again, because it puts more pressure on, analyzing the data and making good decisions to get to the end goals you want to. But it's certainly different from, 15, 20 years ago.
I would say, obviously it's always been a data and information logistics experts, what an asset manager had to be in addition to all what we've said. But I think there's a lot of pressure that's coming in on asset management to drive out more detail, more comprehensive information, more broadly kind of analyzing assets, but then going deeper. And so there's pressure, and then there's margin pressure, and just finding the niches to make the assets perform at the level that they need to. It's a tough job.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they are doing it all. Kind of Lisa's point, you're doing a little bit of everything. And to build those people, they can't just start off that way day one. You're kind of grooming them more at the operational level, and I appreciate that. And leaving the property managers alone, I think hopefully it's because we're doing a great job.
You can't leave them alone.
Executing what needs to happen. Because we try to hire smart people too that you can tell them what to do and they figure it out. And you can. We'll send you the data. So next question is what data actually drives day-to-day decisions, and what tools and software are you using to enable that shift? And Rob, we'll start off with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's we've kind of, or someone had said earlier, asset management fits a different mold based upon what company you're at, what your asset class is, and what your end goals are, right? So from my standpoint, being, in affordable housing asset management, there's only so many drivers that we have, right? We have your revenue, that you're just making sure that your compliance is good and that you're receiving your annual OCAFs. And on the expense side, benchmarking and kind of getting alerts to where you should be digging in. And then now you put all this together, and really for me, it's like, okay, what are my end goals, right? Like we need to make sure our buildings are full, that we're collecting rent, because honestly, those are the biggest downfalls for affordable housing. If you have empty buildings, you're not going to have the rent to, pay your your operational expenses and the other important, non-controllables. But nowadays, like I can say, okay, like I want to create a watch list. What's giving me angst? And you literally can put anything into, we're not supposed to talk about AI, but AI, and it will like create it for you. And you can, find your trackers and say, what information do I need to do to be better at my job? It's all there now, right? So, I mean, depending on what your end goals are, you can kind of start there, work backwards. And for me, it's just, building the habit of looking at these reports every day and in a timely manner. And then, using your asset manager boots on the ground to work with property management to achieve those goals. Because at the end of the day, the data is just telling you what you should do. Then you have to go out and do it. And that's a very, key component of good asset management, I guess, in my opinion.
I agree. I think AI helps out a lot because there is so much data. I know our reports can be like 50 or 60 pages per property of data. So using AI to help sort through that and making those decisions. And I feel like we're getting a lot of pressure all the time on the property management side of how do we get data to you faster? How do it faster and faster and faster? And sometimes we're like, we need to make sure that data is also accurate. So, the faster you're pushing that, the more you're pushing the envelope. And we had like a client call up just the other day and they said, hey, I saw there's $100,000 in the account. Can you send me 75,000 of it? And we're like, well, actually that's earmarked. You got property taxes coming up. You have this. No, when you come out with the next report, you'll see there's actually only 10,000 left, but people are always pushing for more right now and everything. So it's a balance we're always trying to work with as well. And I think AI helps with that. Do you have something?
Yeah, and just in terms of tools, I mean, believe it or not, I mean, Excel is still like homeroom. And you would think after decades of using spreadsheets that we would advance, but it's still when I meet with so many of our clients and companies that I even worked with in the past, it's still there. And so, how do you free up? How do you move into a pure, kind of data flow mechanism to get you the information and do the analytics online? And there's a lot of tools out there now that are starting to put all this together, but there's still a heavy reliance on, how you've built the models in your spreadsheet. You know where that sits. You know how they work. Your algorithms. So it's going to be a little while before we will move to a true kind of fully integrated platform from property management, data aggregation, normalization into a platform that you can truly look at multiple aspects of an asset and not rely as much on Excel. I don't think it'll ever go away. But
yeah, I think that's a lot of like tying the systems together and everything. We use Forecast Manager with Yardi some, and we generate incredible reporting from that. And some of our clients will just say, well, I just have the spreadsheet. Can you just fill out the spreadsheet for me? Kind of your point. And you're like, yes, but look at everything we created. So sometimes people just like to keep it simple as well too. Next question. Firms say they're data-driven, but execution breaks down at the property and asset level. What kind of workflows and reporting and accountability do you put in to ensure that your insights really turn into actions? And on this, we'll go to Michael.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. At the end of the day, there's really no shortage of data. I mean, everyone's got it. I think where we have landed is that we are always questioning if the data is in support of our KPIs and our main business objectives. So if we're sending out information and there's an overload of stuff coming out and people are grabbing onto things, we're always kind of struggling asking the question, is this really what matters? And is it supporting the key metrics that we've all set out to establish at the beginning of sort of the reporting year when we're doing our business planning? Property managers have a lot to do. We want them doing their jobs. So with our asset management team, we look at them, and I look at myself as someone who needs to organize the data and find ways to make sure that we're batching it and preparing it in a way where we can then send it out and distill it and synthesize it. So it's cutting through the noise of everything else everybody is receiving. Because at the end of the day, if you're sending out 20 sales reports, right, people will become kind of numb to it and kind of desensitized, versus sending out one report where you're having a much more information to get to the right stakeholders on a corporate team or executive team that are going to have a hand in making changes from that information or addressing critical items. Those are where we have focused on. So as example that you're talking about forecasting, we've been spending a lot of work because over the past many years, we would get in a habit where we would send forecasts out from a property level, and they would go to a C-suite, and it was either good news, not so good news, or something needed to be addressed. But every month or every time we would forecast 24 months out, you would sort of lose the audience because people would just get used to seeing this drip, and then there was nothing there for people to kind of glean onto or respond to. And it was just sort of washing over everybody. So we had to stop and reevaluate it and using some different AI programs, but also at the end of the day, it is coming through Excel. So these are all very pertinent comments. We're taking it and then we're reporting out, and then we're flagging certain milestones or triggers that we're then going and taking action on. And the result has been people stopping and giving it more attention, because you can't overstate how much everybody has coming at them from every single level down to your customer service. It really is breathtaking. So finding ways to have addition via subtraction, that's what we've been trying to do. So that really speaks to the cadence piece of it.
And I guess, from my standpoint, our asset managers and asset management group is pretty hands-on with the operations group. And the interesting thing that has changed, at least for me, is we have an internal property management company and we do third party as well. But, dealing with our property managers, and as asset managers sitting behind a computer all day, you realize there's so many more tools out there that if your property managers adopt them and buy into them, that they will be, 10, 100 times more effective. And there's a little bit of a dance to that, because I think, with all this data, and then, you enter stuff like chatbots that can respond to residents or take work orders and stuff like that. Like, you really need to kind of partner up your property management team and say, hey, look, this isn't going to replace you. You're going to be on site. We need community managers, but use these tools and you will do a great job. And guess what? That's going to leave you more time to speak to the residents, to deal with the issues that you probably came into the business for, to be a property manager. So, syncing up that, external pressure from a property manager's standpoint, and, providing the tools from, an asset management standpoint has been like a little bit of a journey, I think, over the last 6 to 12 months. But it's certainly an interesting direction for the field.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting sometimes to say, hey, if it's too automated, like what is the role of the property manager sometimes? And I still think there's a lot there to be done, right? We're busy a lot, and we're always trying to automate more and trying to simplify it more. I was actually in this presentation the other day that kind of blew me away, and it had to do with we were with our landscape group, and they said, hey, we're using drones now, and so we're just going to drone the property. And they came in and showed us this 3D version of our entire property that they just did the day before. And they could tilt it at different angles. It'd tell us all the landscaping, how many trees are there, tell us what good shape the roof is in or not, and the asphalt and everything. And I was like, that's pretty powerful. And he's like, the interesting thing is like, right now we had to drive that property and drone it. He's like, by the end of the year, and I'm in Phoenix, and they say, we'll have drone stations, docking stations all around Phoenix, so that anytime you want to see your property, you just call it in, and that drone station will be there like in the next 15 minutes, and you only have a 3D model of everything that's going on and see what's happening. And I was like, well, what is a property manager going to do? But I think still there's a lot to do. And I think it comes back to kind of with the asset managers and property managers and everybody. There's those relationships still. We still have to work with the vendors. We still have to make sure things are done well and quality, and build those relationships with our owners and asset managers so that we're all on the same page of what is the goal of that property. Yeah. And then that's a big factor. Did you have something to add to that, Michael? No. Okay.
I have something to add just quickly. So, I think, so we report up to KKR, and essentially they are investors. And as investors, they look at macro trend and also the economy of where they want to invest. So we obviously look at reporting from where growth patterns are happening, employment growth. So that's, I would consider that as more economic data. Then we have the benchmarking of an asset, which is to determine how is the asset performing relative to among each other, because we have 54 assets, and then how does it perform relative to the submarket. Then we dive into deeper to say, how does it perform financially? Is it performing? Is it spending more money on tools, a maintenance cost than another asset? And so we also do that analysis. And then we go all the way down to operating data, which we look at how long an apartment's been staying vacant, all the way to how long it takes them to respond to a customer, how much money they're spending on marketing, what's the cost per lease. And so as you can imagine, somebody in our seat would need to understand how to interpret all that information, we try to limit our property managers to run reports, because if they're doing data and report for us, that means they're not doing what they're supposed to be good at, which is to deal with a customer and working with the vendors. And so a good property manager should not be at that desk. A good property manager should at least spend 20% of their time walking and seeing things that I can't see because they're boots on the ground. So we have to be careful about what we ask our property management group to do. So a lot of times we rely on what's already available, and our team will actually run those reports rather than getting them to do all these customer reports for us, because you got to ask yourself, what do you want them to spend time on? And they're not the most savvy when it comes to Excel. So just keep that in mind. You got to pair up the task with what they're really good at.
I love that, actually. Yeah, because their job should be being out at that property. And we say that all the time. And there's reports that need to happen. But get you those reports that you need and spend the time actually at the property, meeting the tenants, seeing the property and seeing what's going on the ground.
For the larger investment managers, private equity folks, you have multiple property managers, multiple systems, multiple types of reports that are coming in, whether they're rent roll or traffic reports, occupancy or ESG or labor union, all these different data sets coming in from different systems with different formats from different reports. It gets really complicated fast. And some of the larger portfolio players have tried to get the property managers to get on their ERP so that they can source it that way. Some have been somewhat successful, but unfortunately they can't get everybody on. So now they're running maybe 2 ERPs. Others are just stripping data from documents and reports are flowing in. And then others are still getting packages, PDF packages and emails, and they're keying them into spreadsheets. And so those are kind of the 3 modes we're in today. And there's really a ton of opportunity to streamline, to layer in AI, human in the loop, and clean up that process and make it more efficient.
I agree. All those different systems are making it more complex for everybody and just slows everybody down. Yeah, if we can figure that out, and maybe AI is a solution, that's great. Okay. In today's market, there are tighter margins and constantly shifting assumptions. How to use technology to respond faster and make decisions with confidence. And Mike, we'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, we mentioned it earlier, but we're just constantly getting peppered with questions because everybody wants to know, because there's a lot of risk. And so as an asset manager, you're also a risk manager. And the more you know about your properties and portfolio, the better. And the deeper you can go, the better. And so there's just a constant strain to pull more information, more detail. So there's a lot of several vendors here that talk about abstracting leases, for example, on the commercial side would be more applicable. There are the traditional dates and dollars. Those are pretty straightforward to pull from a lease. You can drop those into an ERP, pretty straightforward. But where it gets complicated and where risk occur, and really you start getting into the edges of exposure, is in the clauses and the ability to break down a clause, whether it's an occupancy or anchor co-tenancy exposure, or it's options that aren't brought in, and where are the cliffs, because you can't make any big mistakes. And I see some heads nodding. So that is what makes AI even more valuable, is being able to break it down. And you have to have the ability to break it down to teach the AI to do that. So when you look at these tools and they say, well, we can hit 90 some odd %, that's likely just the basics. But where an asset manager finds the exposure from risk is in the clauses.
If I can chime in on that. So it's interesting because we're going down the path. So we work with MRI across our company, and we're rolling out their MCI, which is their AI platform piece of it. So it's just that. So the average retail lease now in the retail space will have 450 points, which means there's effectively 450 clauses or items that can effectively impact the deal. And so one interesting thing to note on that, though, is while you get the information abstracted and consolidated, if you're looking at something, say like a co-tenancy report, which is always going to favor the tenant because a landlord would never want co-tenancy to begin with, my question to them was, well, will it summarize or will it break down the language to give you a read on it? And the answer in the position of the industry is no, it will not. So it will consolidate and make sure you have the clauses, But you as the property manager, then at that point, have to be able to go in and still ascertain and read those, which over 30 years of retail leasing have gotten very complicated, and they can be paragraphs and they can say double negatives. And you have to then basically have your team evaluate it. So you know you have the information, but AI will not solve for you the final output, but it will gather it. So it's interesting that the human is still needed to be part of the process. So it's fascinating.
And just to further, in addition to the lease, your deal makers and what they're building into their forecast that flow into our systems that we use to leverage and drive out ultimately a valuation model. Is there any sensitivity being done on who's sandbagging and who's not? Because it matters, right? We're talking about the details that matter. And so there's an opportunity for AI to even build out actual versus budget versus reforecast and sensitizing based on the deal maker to figure out how accurate really are they and where do we adjust?
I love kind of the clauses and little details in the lease there. That's very hard to pull that information out often. And managers and their assistants and everybody's abstracting that often miss some of those little details. And I think AI can help a lot. And what I see is like, we're talking about AI, like doing that initial pulling of information and then a human reviewing it to make sure it's accurate. But I know we run into situations where it's like, oh, well, there's a burger joint there and we want to put in a taco place. And we've gone way down the path, signed the lease, everything's going great, starting to spend some, well, wait a second. That burger place actually has an exclusive on tacos as well, because they sell this one taco. And so there's an exclusive in there. And you run into issues like that if you're not reading every little detail of that lease. And I think that's where AI could help us like pull some of the information out and make sure we're not missing some of the little details as we go through it. Great. So where does centralized decisions add the most value? And where does asset autonomy level decision matter more? And what technology helps us balance out the two of these things? And we're going to go back to you, Lisa, on this one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I think what we've seen so far with the successes has always been in more the back of house, where if a human's doing something repeatedly, those services tend to be centralized. So accounting is a perfect example. Level one leasing is what we call, after it goes to a call center, you sort it out that it's not a vendor call, that somebody sets it up, you usually have a touch point. Those could be centralized. Any type of deposit accounting, move out type of statement, those could be centralized. Leasing to some extent has been, but there's been a movement. I think during the pandemic, you could do a lot of self-guided tours. I think that verdict is now split in some ways. I think most of our assets, we prefer an actual human because the closing itself, you can't really do remotely. And on the maintenance side of things, there hasn't really been much movement of centralizing services because it's still a very trade specific. But there are, our single family platform, which we, KKR owns a portfolio of single family. We have seen some centralizing services on the maintenance side where you essentially have a bunch of guys in a van, they're just driving around town. That works as a team because when you're in single family, you don't really have the ability to have somebody on site. So I think there's a lot that's been tried. And I think when you equip these centralized services with the right tools, that could be pretty powerful because when you think about move out statements, something like that, it's pretty time consuming. Generally, you don't get it right just because there's some subjectivity that occurs on the site team. It's probably a very common theme among residents that they complain about because they think they clean the apartment when they moved out, but you don't think they clean. So there has to be a tool out there to help simplify that. But there isn't. So I think the more you could be clear and define and move services that are not happening on the site team, like processing invoices, cutting checks, all that could be done off-site. Those services are best to be centralized, moves off-site, because what you want your property manager to do, because you got to remember, you're paying your value of your assets depend on that person's salary. So what do you want them to do? You want them to focus on renewals, resident retention. You want them to focus on resident complaints. the human interaction to make sure that the building is in a good condition. Other than that, you don't want them to do anything that could be going back to the back of the house. Same thing with their maintenance team. They have to be physically there. That's why it's been difficult to centralize those services.
Yeah, I think taking those services and like grouping like accounting and everything together is something we see a lot of people do. I think we found it's also difficult having great communication, because we want our property managers to talk to the county and work together. It's a budget. Maybe we should all be on the same page. So it's hard to centralize some of that. What about as far as centralizing with asset like managers and what their decisions are versus allowing some of the property managers to make decisions, do things? You guys run into that, or you say, hey, property managers shouldn't make any decisions?
No, I think listen, I think generally we like property managers that are problem solvers and curious like us, that has the owner's mindset on. Usually when they're in that capacity, we let them run a lot of decisions, because at the end of the day, we just need somebody that can make good, sound decision, that cares about the asset as much as we do. And so there's not usually a solution or an answer. It just requires common sense. And so that's why it's very important to partner up with a good property management firm. So we work with about 10. We work with some of the largest property management firms, and we work some of the local ones. And what we focus more about is the relationship part, but also on the site team in terms of that property manager. And so we actually get involved in interviewing all our property managers, because there's a certain type of personality we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that they may not know everything, but they're scrappy. And they want, they're also hungry, and that they want to do things better, that they're curious about how things work. So we generally like someone with that pedigree, not necessarily somebody that has been in the industry for a long period of time, because traditionally when those managers would spend that much time, they're very set in their ways. And so that's not what we look for, because I think average asset managers will perform average. And if I want to beat my competition, I have to find somebody that has the intensity of curiosity and also that competitiveness.
I love that term, curiosity, and having property managers. We always say, think like the owner, whether you're the asset manager, the property manager, even the accountant or whatever. Think like you're the owner, and you'll do good things. So I think that's great. All right, this last question is a fill in the blank question. And we'll start at the end and work down. And it is modern asset managers and their teams and their tech partners win when they stop doing blank and they start doing blank. We'll start down at the end with you, Mike.
All right. I think it's, where we all want to go. We need to, as asset managers, stop managing Excel, PDF, email all day long, and start spending more time analyzing, thinking, planning.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything's developing and moving forward, and the asset manager, is, as in my opinion, is just like the quarterback of the whole process. So again, we're dealing with legal, we're dealing with human resources, we're dealing with accounting and all the other key functions of an owner. And we just have to remember that all those people are moving forward at the same time that we're trying to move forward in our, vertical. So I think, for me, it's like stop, holding on to old ways and just keep moving forward with the progress that everyone else is making, because as we're exploring the new tools and new data and, daily updates or whatever, everyone else is doing the same thing too. So everyone's heading in a different direction. So I think adopting that and just figuring out how to be most efficient is the way to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. And picking up kind of what Mike said, we like to say work more on the business instead of working so much in the business. So it's just asking ourselves, what are we grinding on? What's a solution? And if one team is having this challenge, it's very likely that we have a dozen of other teams that are having the same challenge. So stop working in your direct silo, communicate with the other stakeholders across the different departments, and definitely pull people together, look for the challenges you can solve. You're not going to solve everything, but if you have one challenge you can work on over the next 90 days and make meaningful progress and roll out. Those are real big wins that you can build on over time. So just try to work on the business.
I would say I would stop doing something just because how it's always been done. I think that's what a lazy or a dumb person would do. I think a smart person would constantly ask, is there a better way to do something? Right? Just because it's done this way doesn't mean it makes sense. And so I think, unfortunately, multifamily is a little bit slow to evolve. I think recently it's, in some ways, the market has been a little bit more challenging. So it's forcing all of us to be pushing the envelope a little bit and get out of our comfort zone. Whereas before, rent growth saves all our jobs. I mean, we could be idiots and still make a lot of money and everything's fine. And so I think now there's more competitiveness. You have to be, more creative. And I would say also go out and see your sites. The requirements we have is that you're always out looking at your property. I can't stress how many asset managers sit behind their desk and look at numbers all day. Real estate is a tangible asset group. You have to see it. Every asset has its own personality. They have opportunities that are different from one versus another. You have to understand who your competition is and why they are competing and how you compete with them. So I would say you can't do that at your desk. You can't look at spreadsheets or pictures all day. You got to go talk to people, talk to your residents. And I think somebody who's curious will win all day.
I love that, actually, and you stole my answer to a certain point there. But I'll say, I say, anytime I hear this is how I've always done it, it just drives me crazy. And I'm like, that is absolutely the wrong answer. And I thought, so stop thinking that way. Start thinking about how we're using AI, how we're using technology to, not just do things better, which is important, but also like validate what we already think. A lot of times. When I look at AI, I already think I know what the answer might be, or I have, what I think I want to do and see what it says too. And it maybe generates some other thoughts as well and helps validate what you're thinking. So continue to move forward. Change is always hard, we always say. So you really have to be pushing that change in your organization and be a driver of that change, or it's not going to happen. And I see a lot of companies now that aren't doing that. And it's opportunities for the rest of us that are. But there are a lot of companies that are kind of just stuck in their ways, and things are changing very quickly.
And just to add on to what Lisa said, just a couple of weeks ago, I was out at an asset in Palm Springs that we own, which never gets visited because it's just a good asset. It chugs along. The excitement that the property management people had when we came out to visit. I mean, if it gives them validation, it re-energizes them. I mean, it's a people business, right? Asset managers cannot do without property managers. So, keeping that human element is still going to be very much relevant, at least as I can see for the foreseeable.
And same, we need you guys too. Right. Well, thanks everybody. Great panel. And we're going to now open it up to see if anybody has any questions.
I can come around with the mic.
Hey. Hi. This is a two-part question if we have time. Number one, I'm just curious if you guys could let us know one thing that you absolutely love about your job being asset managers. And number two, if there was one quality or character trait that you could still instill in every single one of your property managers, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, and I'd say in instilling the property managers, I know a lot about that. And we talk a lot about it too. You brought up curiosity. I think that's one of the things I love to see, that they always want to learn. They always want to do something more. And then for me, it's passion. It's bringing that passion energy. They love what they're doing. They're excited about it. There are plenty of managers out there that have tons of experience. They've been doing it for a long time. They know what they're doing, but they're not. They don't bring the energy to it. And if you don't have that passion and energy, doesn't matter how much experience you have. You're not going to do a great job. I do great work.
Yeah. And to your first question, I would just say, at least my experience has been, I've gotten to work with so many different public groups, private investors, institutional groups, worked with cities, municipalities, the employees at the site. So it's just getting to engage with so many different people. And when I work with different groups, you develop your skills a bit more. They change a bit differently. So I just get a lot of flavor from the different groups and ownership that I work with. and it just keeps it exciting.
I think to the first question, assets have there's life. It's a place, right? And so that gives you flexibility to have some creativity, not just a brick and mortar. So I think there's a lot around that we could talk about. And then in terms of property managers, consistency. Just if it's just like this, you can count on it, right? The timing, the delivery, the service level, the quality. If it's just consistent, even if it's not perfect, just consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the ability to work with all the different groups like we were talking about before. Whether it's at corporate though, but also like walking into the CEO's office and giving him a presentation and then flying to a site and then hanging out with, the porter, for 20 minutes and just talking to them. Like you really go everywhere on the spectrum, left, right, up, down. And I've just always found that, to be, validating and a challenge. And it's, you have to kind of be a chameleon, which, is a fun thing to do. In terms of property managers, I think it's tough because I know property management is a thankless job and it's super tough to be boots on the ground. And, but for a good property manager, it's just like, I want to understand that like they understand what asset management is doing. And again, we all make mistakes and, so not being defensive, being honest, being open, showing problems, letting us fix it together, working collaboratively as a team. Like that's what really makes you run good assets. In this business, hiding things is probably the worst thing that someone can do. So just getting people comfortable to, be open about what their issues are, what's working well, what's not working. That's a great trait to have in a property manager.
I would say my favorite part is probably every day is different. So I don't, I walk in a day, I'm now trying to figure out how to subdivide a parcel because that's better use of that asset, to trying to figure out, why leasing isn't working at one of the community and looking at different technology solutions. So I like it because it's different, right? And then again, it's that utility mindset. And at the end of the day, you're trying to learn as much as you can to deploy on an asset. So I think in terms of property manager, I think I agree with you. I think it's the passion and the curiosity. But I actually think happiness is also really important. You can quickly tell how an asset is performing and how the team is by the leader. If the leader is not a happy person and is kind of annoyed with people, probably in the wrong business, right? Because that's how they're going to interact with your residents. So generally, I think the more successful ones, not only do they show the passion, but they have this energy that you can feel the moment you walk into the community. And so that is something you experience. It's not, it's hard to hire somebody like that, but like you can generally tell based on your interaction how that person is.
I agree. I think those are all great answers. I'm going to add one more because I just thought as you guys are kind of going down the list there. But it's the energy that you're talking about as well. And now I kind of forgot what I was going to say about it. And the curiosity, but it's caring about the property. As we look forward, this is what I was going to say. With technology. And I think as you see technology happening more and more, it's going to take care of a lot of those mundane tasks for us. It's going to do a lot of those things for us. And you need people that can still work with people. And I think this is what made me think about it is when you talked about the mic on the end was that you need great communicators. You may be working with asset managers, you're working with vendors, you're working with all these different people. And you still need people, and you still need people to work with people and understand the tenants and be out the property and do all those things. So I think those communication skills and people skills are going to become more important as technology does more and more for us.
Yeah. So with all the new technology, when evaluating technology for a property, what is some of the best decision-making criteria that's gone into the decisions that have made it most successful for deploying new technology across the portfolio?
I think first of all, it has to work consistently, and also it can't be a single solution. It has to be ability to integrate. There's so much technology out there, and you have to make the experience to the resident and the employee seamless. And seamless means like they can't log into 20 apps or 20 different applications. So that's why good technology will figure out how to integrate with something already in place. And also it has to work, and you have to be able to measure in terms of like engagement. So if for example, if you're launching like a resident app, right, it has to be able to report out how often does the resident stay engaged on the app, what do they use it for, what percentage of people download that app, and what's the most popular place they go when they use that app, and do they also share that app with the other people in their home. So like it has to have the ability for you to measure the success. It just can't be one solution, because otherwise you can't measure what you're saving. And good technology actually has to track back what your ROI is going to be, because if you're going to spend money employing that technology, then you have to figure out either you're going to get more revenue or you're going to cut expenses somewhere to offset that cost. Otherwise, you just can't keep adding on technology without some kind of payback.
I think you have to be, cautious when you look at the different options. There's so many options. There are a lot of pop-up tech companies. Got to be careful. Some of them are, backed by capital. There's a lot of pressure to sell, and deliver, but they don't have the background in the industry. So when you talk with technology providers, I would always recommend that you talk with folks that have the background in the operations, asset management, that have brought that through into the technology over years, as opposed to just popping up technology, because AI can do so much so fast, but you have to have that flavor of what's best from our industry sector. And then data accuracy is always important. So, being able to trust what you see is critical.
Well, I think we're officially out of time. Thanks everybody for showing up today. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you all so much for coming. And if any of you haven't been out to the exhibition hall yet at your lunch, that is still open. So you can go ahead and enjoy that for a little bit longer as well.